Welcome to the Call to Action podcast with Nicole Magic, where conscious awakened leaders listen and action takers are rewarded. Join us for the insightful wisdom of today's special guest with an irresistible offer. Hello, everyone. This is Nicole Magic with the Call to Action podcast, where professional service providers and strategists share their wisdom. It is a handful of questions because we value everyone's time and energy, and we'll make it quick, simple, follow, and let's get on with it. So today we have the most lovely Samantha Stelk, who is a coach in a very unique area. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Samantha, and in a few sentences, can you tell us who you are and what you do? Love this.
Absolutely. Hi, Nicole. It's so good to be here with you this morning. And I am a self-love and sexual empowerment coach with a trauma-informed background. I help women heal their relationship to their bodies and their sexual energy. And that's kind of essentially what I do in a nutshell. But I also help them transform limiting beliefs about themselves. And we do that through teaching them how to cultivate a sacred self-pleasure practice as a healing modality.
I love that. So what you do is so important and empowering and just an amazing piece that people need in the world. What wisdom would you like to share with our audience?
Well, I wanted to share that I recently did a 4-part workshop self-love series in Santa Cruz, and that's where I live, and I did that live with, and this was my first time. I've been holding space online for a few years, but it was such a gift to bring it in person because I love being in community face to face with other women doing this work, because it's so powerful when we are together in the flesh. And through that experience, I wanted to share a little bit of the nuggets of wisdom that I gathered from that, because there was, and I've experienced this before, there's a lot of themes. You know, we're very separate. We're separated in this world at this time, especially with COVID, but we feel so alone. And especially these taboo topics that aren't spoken about, have a lot of stigma and shame around them. And so we stay isolated and we're suffering alone, not knowing that these are actually very common things that many of us are experiencing but are not talking about. So that part of it is really healing, to come together in a safe container where we can vulnerably express the parts of ourselves that have experienced shame or neglect, or the parts of us that we have disowned. And at the end of this self-love series, we did a yoni puja, which is puja is Sanskrit for ceremony. Yoni is a Sanskrit word for vagina. And at the end of the series, I designed it that way because you need to build a lot of trust and safety with the other women in that group. But so many of the women had such a strong disconnect from their bodies, from their yoni, from this beautiful, beautiful sacred part of ourselves, this powerful part that brings forth life into the world in many forms. And so for them to begin to really see this part of them as holy, as beautiful, was so profoundly healing for so many of them. And that is a byproduct, the suppression of our sexual energy, of our feminine divine radiance, is from thousands of years of patriarchy, of, you know, the witch hunts of religious institutions suppressing this energy, because it is so powerful when used consciously and held in a really beautiful, sacred way. And so I'm helping women to reclaim that. And that is what I'm feeling really juiced up and lit up about. So yeah, just I'm just on a high from this past month, and all the beautiful experiences that I've been having with other
That's
women.
awesome. And the sacred space that you create in order to allow all these women to do that and overcome the fears and the insecurities and the traumas and different things, to reconnect with their own bodies and disconnect from the shame and grief and fears and anger even that would be held on to from whatever traumas or things like, or beliefs that they have held about themselves. I think that is a super important thing, because that's a huge part of empowerment, and especially women's empowerment. What would you say to, like, as a follow-up to this question that you're sharing all this wisdom, is what would you say to somebody who isn't quite sure, they want to do something, and they're kind of strapped with that fear of not knowing what to expect, and can I do this, should I do this? What would you say to somebody in that position, that they're on that teeter-totter edge of, I want to, but I'm freezing and I can't?
Right. First, one of the foundational practices is compassion. And there's no quick fix. This is not always an overnight transformation for many of us. And so just having that loving kindness and gentleness with ourselves, and giving ourselves permission to express and be all of who we are. And I know this also takes time, but that's a large part of my work, is like the more therapeutic in my one-on-one practice is learning how to relate to the parts of us that have been fragmented and disconnected in our body-mind connection, and learning how to hold space for these parts of us that are tender and sensitive and vulnerable, and creating that safety for ourselves. So the foundation is creating a foundation of trust and safety with yourself, holding yourself unconditionally, even if you're feeling frozen, stuck, afraid, overwhelmed. And it helps slowly, you'll begin to bridge that gap. And eventually, like I work a lot with boundaries. So you'll hold space for these parts. Like, I acknowledge you, I see you. I want to really create this loving cocoon for you to just be who you are, exactly who you are, and not try to change or fix you. But at a certain point, we also need to set healthy boundaries with ourselves. So sometimes if there's an inner child piece, or there's a lot of really loud fears or insecurities, through time and gentleness, we can say, I acknowledge you, I see you, and I'm going to listen to this other part of me, even if it's like a small voice that knows, or like there's a body sensation that we feel like excited or are lit up in any way about this work, or about healing sexual trauma, about becoming more sexually empowered and embodied. Then it's like listening to that voice. It's like giving that your power. And it takes time, but it's a lifelong journey. So knowing that to begin with gives you a lot of spaciousness. And like a lot of the women I work with in the self-love series, there is a wide range of people who have more familiar with this work, people who are kind of brand new. And that was really healing for them to express, this is new for me. Some of this languaging is new for me. I feel a little uncomfortable, but I'm still showing up. And,
very nice.
And yeah, just remaining in that beginner's mind, kind of that compassionate curiosity.
I love that. And that's super important. And that's a very special skill that you bring to the table when it comes to that amount of compassion and unconditional love, to be able to hold that space and keep that container. So you're doing great work. The next question I have for you is, what obstacle became your greatest opportunity?
So yeah, really what led me onto this path was I experienced childhood sexual trauma, and I grew up in California where there's big emphasis on the superficial and on the physical level. And so not having a way to express or access that pain or that grief, I, like many of us, like numb it, and was just really focused on the superficial and kind of stayed at that level, because going deeper felt scary. It could feel like death for some of us to go to these places. But what I love about this work and what it teaches us is that it's all impermanent and we won't get stuck. Because I know a lot of people have a fear of getting stuck if they allow themselves to feel the grief or any of the pain that was associated with the past. And this is a lot about my work, is coming back to pleasure, like going to those depths and then coming back to the celebration of life. But back to your question, got a little sideswiped. Yeah, that has slowly led me on this path where just synchronicity and it has presented me with people, the right places and experiences that have helped me to heal this and want to help others do the same, because I was very disconnected, again, to my body, to my pleasure. I wasn't able to orgasm for a very long time by myself, really, or with a partner. And then having this experience doing my sex, love, and relationship coaching program with Layla Martin, she had us self-pleasuring 5 days a week and doing really deep emotional trauma healing and integration. And through all of those practices, I was able to orgasm freely and become multi-orgasmic and just continuing to explore those edges and realms. So yeah, that's where I am today.
Excellent. To have overcome an adversity or obstacle such as that, where the trauma becomes, part of, like, infiltrates the body and creates this, the blockage to experiencing pleasure. There is that space of having to acknowledge and allow yourself to experience pleasure. Allow yourself, giving yourself permission that you deserve that pleasure. Yeah,
totally. And I want to demystify this for some of your listeners, is that they may be hearing me speaking now, but I still, there's still times where I'm self-pleasuring, or just in life where I'm like, am I allowed to feel this good? Like, there's resistance that arises. There's like that ancient voice that's like, you're not good enough. Like, you're not allowed to have all of the things that you desire. You're not worthy. So again, it's still like listening to that, holding space for it, but then coming back to your breath, coming back to your body, and coming back to your intuition and your trust and your knowing that, it is your divine birthright to experience pleasure, to experience love, and that you're worthy of all of it.
Yeah, and I think right there with what you said, and the work that I do around limiting beliefs, is a lot of times if there's something that's traumatic, that can create a space for you to adopt a belief and then find truth in it over and over again, because that's what we want to do, is validate something that we're believing in, validate a truth. We want to be right. So part of our mind says, hey, I have this idea, and the other part of your mind says, yeah, now let me find the truth in it. And then we validate these things over and over again of, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve, I'm not good enough, not smart enough, or whatever. And because most of those beliefs get instilled between, up to 7 years old. But then we can adopt beliefs after that by well, who it is that we're with, the types of things that we're experiencing, and then finding those things and saying, yep, see that I was right. Yep, see, I was right with that. See, I don't deserve that. And then what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is kind of having that, getting to that space where even though it may not be completely erased just yet, but you're changing the belief because you have an awareness of, and then you're choosing, right? Because our beliefs are just choices. We choose to believe one thing or another, regardless of whether it is absolutely true or not. It's a belief. It is something that we adopt to be true. And it doesn't have to be proven. So we can choose our beliefs. And when you're saying having that awareness, that's part of the process that I want to point out to the listeners here is it's okay to still hear that in your head and yet be in that space of, but I know it's not true. So then that space after that is what you just said is, and you have your process, whether it's through the breath or whatever, and you're putting your attention saying, but I know that not to be true. I'm not believing that to be true right now. And then over that time, it changes that belief. So I wanted to point that out because a lot of listeners know what my process is, and they know that beliefs can change. And some of them, we just have to have that awareness because that shows we're taking the steps in the positive space. It's not just a overnight.
Of course. Yeah. Awareness is everything. If you don't have an awareness of it, a lot of these live in the subconscious brain. So they're below consciousness. And even when we're aware of them, they still are operating because they live in our bodies. So that's why self-pleasuring is so powerful, because you are accessing your subconscious mind while you're self-pleasuring. And I also play theta music, which your brain from 1 to 7 is in a theta, is kind of a hypnotic state where it is absorbing all of this information and conditioning, and it doesn't have, our frontal lobes aren't fully developed, so it doesn't have this mechanism that's like that conditioning is like a little not the most empowered, or that's not the most supportive conditioning that you can adopt, or operating system that you can adopt. So we just take on everything, and then it's stored in our bodies. That's how we hold ourselves. So it really helps to activate the subconscious, and then using affirmation while you're self-pleasuring to help transform that belief. That's a part of my work. So there's so many amazing angles in which to work with the subconscious. It's
excellent.
incredible.
I think that segues right into the next question about what is your favorite mindfulness practice or technique?
So many, but right now one of them is, even if it's just for a moment, closing your eyes and bringing your awareness to the felt sense, the physical sensations arising inside your body moment to moment, and just noticing, like, what am I experiencing right now? What is my felt experience? And then just asking yourself, can I be with this moment to moment? Like, whether it's a good sensation or it's an uncomfortable and pleasant one, asking myself, can I be with this? And really starting to develop, sometimes this is called Shakti meditation, naming the sensation or whatever you're experiencing in your body can help to create that awareness and deepen that connection between the body and mind, because so many of us are disconnected from the wisdom and intelligence of our body, and we're just going, like plowing through life on autopilot. And just to take, because we live very busy lives, so even to take 1 to 5 minutes to just be and breathe with yourself. But I also have like breast massage and eye gazing and all of these other wonderful things that are a little bit more complex, but I would say that one right now.
Very nice. Well, they can definitely head on over to see you after and maybe catch what that is. Excuse me. Now for the final question, What is your irresistible call to action for action takers?
So I do have an upcoming week-long retreat called the Goddess Odyssey Retreat coming up May 15th through the 21st, an hour outside of LA, and it's going to be really powerful. It's an activation in the Tao Tantric arts, and I have a co-facilitator who's going to be doing Kundalini yoga and meditation. I'm going to be bringing the sacred sexuality aspect, jade egg, things like this, and I don't know if this will be out by then, but we hope to be doing many more of these as well. I'll just shout out one more. I have a 3-month coaching program called Sensual Metamorphosis, where there's an online course that literally guides you step by step through different sacred sexuality practices and teaching you how to build that trust and safety and teaching you how to self-pleasure. And we have group calls and also one-on-one calls as well. So those are the 2 things that I'm really jazzed about right now.
Nice. That's great. Can you tell us your website?
My website is lovelegacycoaching.com.
Love it. Lovelegacycoaching.com for all of you listening. It's all in the description. And don't forget to listen to the next episode of the Call to Action podcast, where conscious, awakened leaders listen and action takers are rewarded. We'd love to hear your favorite takeaway from this episode, so leave us a comment, and thank you for listening. Thank you so much for being here, Samantha, and I'm Nicole Magic. Have a spectacular day, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Yay.
Goodbye, everyone, and thank you for listening. I hope you found today's episode insightful and invaluable to elevating your own business.